Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the work session of the September 7th City Council meeting for the City of Monroe. We'll move right to roll call and note that all members are present, save Ms. Malcolm. Hopefully, she's in a closing and may be on her way shortly, so we'll keep an eye on that seat. We'll move straight to the City Administrator update. Logan?
Thank you, Mayor. I won't get into any specific projects tonight, just want everybody to know we are monitoring, the COVID outbreak and how it's affecting Monroe, Walton County, and trying to conduct business accordingly. As you know, we lost 2 employees just this past week alone from it, and we're just trying to readapt and monitor how we go forward from here. If it ramps up too much, we will take a look at going back to virtual meetings as we did last year. So I'll just be in touch with each of you as we move forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Logan? Moving to Central Services update, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir. Couple quick items. Facilities and grounds crew picked up a little over 3,500 pounds of trash and debris on roadsides, downtown, whatnot. CDBG 2020 timeline, we have a pre-construction meeting set for next week. So hopefully the areas of East Washington, Mobley Circle, Felker, all of that will get started with construction sometime towards the end of September, 1st of October. I don't want to run into a situation where we were on the last CDBG where we're having to wait during the winter to go back and pave. So we'll keep fingers crossed that we can get to that as quick as possible and have no delays. Front parking lot, Pilot Park, Playhouse building, new striping in the parking lots. We tried a contractor this time, and that worked out well. It was far cheaper than I expected it to be, and they did a great job. Phase 2 at Plaza should be underway. We had a pre-con meeting Friday a week ago to get all that going. Material is on site. Community cleanup day, we had, talked about having another one after we had the one in the spring. So it'll be December 4th, just to remind everybody again. I'll continue to kind of shoot that out on Facebook. And then the only other thing is project timelines updated, attached on the back. Good luck reading that, but if you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Mr. Bailey? Hearing none, we'll move straight to committee information. Finance, Mr. Gregory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Beth, will you please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Gregory. You have the financial status report as of July in front of you. I won't go into detail. Revenues and expenses citywide are trending as expected based on budget. We are continuing to see an increase in sales tax collections year over year and year over 2019 as well. We are working on capital and operating budgets for 2022. Department heads have all handed in their budget requests, and I'm working on that, and hopefully we'll plan a meeting with council as a budget planning retreat within the next month or so. We will be implementing a financial transparency tool, which is part of the budgeting software that we purchased, and we hope to roll that out in October, and once we do, I will blast that out to everyone to let you know. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Are there any questions for Ms. Thompson?
Can I ask a question of Ms.
Yes,
Thompson? Can you tell me, based on what you're seeing right now, if we'll have a surplus of funds in the general fund by year end?
There is a report in the financial status report for the general fund, and as of July, it looks like the expenses exceeded revenues by about $109,000. However, due to the ARPA funds that we received from the federal government, we had a $111,000 revenue loss last year that we were able to get back out of the ARPA funds, so that would offset that. However, trending how revenues are going for the next couple of months, I think will be higher than expected. This is on a conservative level of what I have in here. So to answer your question, I think revenues will increase expenses overall in the general fund.
I mean, do you think it'll be as much as $500,000?
No, I don't think it'll be that much. I really don't know, but based on this report that I do, it takes current year-to-date and then projected for the rest of the year, I think we'll be within a couple $100,000.
I got a question also. With the funds that been coming in with the COVID thing and what they sending down from the federal level, that wouldn't put us with a bigger surplus than what you saying?
That doesn't go into the general fund, Mr. Garrett. That has to be, the federal government and the Department of Treasury on their guidance said that that had to go into a special revenue fund, a special operating fund, I'm sorry, separate from general fund and any other utility or enterprise fund. So that isn't a separate fund by itself. And as it's used, those expenses will come to y'all to be approved as we use those funds.
Have they come down with the wording yet about how that money's to be allocated?
They have what they call a final rule, but they say it is not a final rule. Don't take it to the bank. So it is a final rule from the Department of Treasury. It's an updated guidance that they were updating weekly and monthly, but they haven't came out with that definitive final rule on it yet.
But follow Mr. Garrett's question, even though that's in a special account right now.
It's in a special
all done,
fund and a special bank account.
Will that not offset general fund expenses, though, once it's all settled up?
We cannot use it to offset any revenue losses. That is in the guidance.
Not revenue losses, but expenses.
There's only certain guidance on what you can use it for. So if, let's say we had to go out and buy a piece of equipment for general fund, we can't use ARPA funds for that. It has to be specific, based under the guidelines that they have. And it is in a separate bank account and a separate fund.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's usually for projects, things like water, sewer, that sort of thing, and so you have to designate what the project is, and it's almost like a grant fund. So once you lay out the project and what you're spending for, then you allocate the funds for that, and you can use it for that. But you can't just come in and reimburse something because it sort of has to do with what you're doing.
And I understand, with that in mind, though, that if you were not using that to fund that project you were just talking about, that project might be funded out of general fund, so you are saving money from the general fund by funding that project.
Sure, yeah, so for instance, with some of our bond that we recently got, we'll be able to work within some of those projects, the same kind of funding with ARPA.
Let me ask
Most of
you,
it appears to be utility related. Very little of it is public safety or, general fund related items.
Yeah.
what about the grant with the CDBG that we normally do the water and infrastructure with? Would that money be able to go to CDBG and that CDBG money be able to go back to the general fund? Or-
No, because the same way that, just like you're talking about with the grant, so you apply for that project, you'll have to spend it on that project. And I think actually Chris is gonna be telling us a little bit more about that later. But it's the same kind of idea. You can't take the one fund and use it for the other. But if you applied, for instance, for the same type project as an expanse, you can't do it for the exact same project as the CDBG that we're gonna do now. But if you were to expand that project some, you might connect it, but you can't overlap the funds, if that makes sense. Sorry, any other questions on that point? Beth, the finance tool that you were talking about, the transparency piece, that's what we were discussing earlier?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, so I think this is a really great thing, and this is something when we went down to GMA, we went into long-term budgeting, especially when we have financial questions, one of the things they talked about was a financial dashboard. So dealing with more charts and graphs so that those of us who are not necessarily mathematicians in the room can look at what's going on with the numbers and have a better grasp of what's happening. As we discuss that, just so that we can make better informed decisions as a council, and so that we can look in, and then if we see something, we can dive in deeper with those numbers. So Beth and I discussed that and thought that that might be helpful as we move forward with making decisions. A little easier to digest the information, as with most things these days, if you have a bank account online or anything, you can go to that page, and when you land on it, it shows you what's going on with your finances, which is helpful for those of us who are not accountants. So Nathan, you're off the hook. Anyway, so that's all. I just want to share that. So thank you very much, Ms. Thompson, for doing that. As far as I know, I'm good. Mr. Mayor?
I think you have one more thing.
Oh, sorry for the, so Mr. Russell?
It is time for open enrollment and going out for renewal on health plans and stuff like that. To start that process, we start with the PHAs every year, the personal health assessments, we're advocating for a change in the way we've done it in the past and the way we would do it going forward. Currently, we give wellness credit off of the deductible for certain biometric features, like BMI, blood pressure, cholesterol, and no tobacco use. It's been a good program up to this point. For instance, when we originally started it, we had about 24 people that didn't qualify for any deductible credit at all. And now that's down to 6 people. So we're getting healthier as an organization. On the top end of it, people that qualify for at least $750 worth of deductible credit every year has moved from 106 to 130. So we're beginning to see the efforts of the health and wellness really take place. I'd like to ask for the approval to create a second tier of credit. So let's say you can't get to the 3.5 on cholesterol, but you get hit 5, which is a medically acceptable number. I'd like to be able to give you a $100 credit off of your deductible for that. And also for the BMI, to move that to 35 for a $100 deductible credit. The blood pressure, 140 over 90. And of course, the no tobacco use continues to be the $500 credit for everybody. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that we're trying our best to figure out a way to incent people to go get the COVID vaccine. And I'd like to be able to offer for this year a $500 wellness credit if you show proof of having the COVID vaccine by December 1st of this year. So those are the changes that we'd like to make. Any questions?
Will the COVID vaccine piece be retroactive, so if you get
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yes, everybody who's got one can show evidence of it by December 1st, we get the $500 credit. Which, if you think about it, if you qualified for every one of our deductible credits this year, your deductible for 2022 would be 0. Unheard of. But we think it's a great incentive to try to get people to be healthy.
And with the PHA testing, and it says we have an agreement with Piedmont Walton, does that mean that
Yes.
is where we're going to be tested?
Yes, Piedmont Walton's actually going to come here. We'll utilize the old clinic downstairs and at a much reduced rate. They're great partners, $25 for each one of the PHAs. Last year, we paid Carrie TC $65 apiece.
Do we know our percentages right now in vaccinated, unvaccinated?
We don't.
And you could share?
We don't.
The deductions that were given, does that come from us or does that come from the insurance company? How would we make it a 2-tiered situation? Because we're willing to give that incentive from our,
I'm sorry, I guess I'm not understanding the question.
the second tier incentive and the first tier incentive that lower the costs.
Right.
Do we pay that or does the insurance company pay that?
So you have a deductible each year, right? And all we're doing is saying that because you're meeting these certain health barriers or biometrics, we're going to reduce your cost for that. Now, the city would absorb the cost if you went to the hospital or you had an extended stay. But, the reality is that if you're doing everything that you can do to be healthy, hopefully we're going to keep you out of the hospital. I'll just make a statement to that. The reason we are so concerned about the COVID and really encouraging the COVID vaccine is that it looks like at this point, we're probably about $600,000 in cost that is directly related to COVID this year. And that number's not going to go away unless people can avoid getting it and going in for long-term treatment. A 3-week stay at Piedmont Walton's costing us about $85,000 right now for COVID treatment. So, got to get it under control. Any more questions?
Are there any more questions for Mr. Russell?
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Les. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Tyler.
Approval for it from the committee.
So we'll throw that one next week, that's tonight.
So,
You gotta ask for it.
so, all right, well, I'd like to move to put it on the agenda. Are we moving to put it on the agenda, or
Need a
we?
motion.
I'll make a motion that we
Okay.
put it on.
Approve it. Is that what you did, Lee? You made the motion that the committee approve it? I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Moving to the airport, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, sir. Couple of quick notes on the airport. We received our reimbursement check back from the DOT for the paving of the runway. It was $777,000, I believe. So essentially, us paving the entire runway cost the city about $50,000 total. So great project, something that'll be similar on the terminal building that we were approved for, of which engineers are working on both the site plan for the maintenance hangar that was proposed and the terminal building as well. Hopefully, as soon as I have design, everything back, I'll bring that before council. Don't expect it to be October, maybe in November at the earliest. And provided any questions, that's all I've got on the airport.
If there's no question, that'll be all for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Chris. Moving to Public Works, Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Solid Waste Report, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Our transfer station tonnage report, we were down over 426 tons compared to the last year, and that was because we lost 2 days because of the incident we had back in July. We deposited over 7,400 tons for the month of July for this year. Curbside recycling update, we did receive a notice and happy to announce that we're able to add more material to our curbside program through our partnership with West Rock Recycling. We now are able to collect food and beverage cartons to our curbside program, and I did attach a notice from them and a flyer. We're going to add the flyer to our website once we get it updated. And also, there's a tag, OOPS tag, that we actually, as a sample of what we're going to be setting out to help educate the customers on what goes into the cart. The tag has some check boxes that we'll check and attach to the cart, and has a perforated tag that we'll tear off with the address on it, and we'll collect that tag and give them 3 opportunities to get it right. And we'll pull the cart for about 3 months, and they can request the cart back. But the idea is to reduce the amount of contamination that goes into the curbside program and our processor. That's where it's coming from. Customers that we've actually ran out of carts, so we're trying to increase our inventory, so the participation is way up. And we're in the process of ordering more blue containers, so that's a good thing. And they can call the office at 770-267-6933 to make an order. On the glass collection, participation's up a little bit. We collect a little less than 2 tons for the month of July. And also, we're in our holiday route this week. We modified our route schedule. Tomorrow, we'll be servicing the Tuesdays and Wednesday customers. Thursday, you'll be on schedule. And we covered Monday customers today. And I take any questions that you might have.
All right, it appears there are no questions. So let's turn to the action item for the committee, which is the discussion and approval on the emergency purchase of the garbage truck with the automated side loader. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. We did make a request for the committee approval for the emergency purchase at an additional cost of $8,673 at $278,673. We thank the committee for moving forward on the purchase to get ahead of a 15% increase that would have went into effect at the end of August and would have raised the price up to $320,000. So I take any questions on that you might have on the purchase.
Any questions? All right, that's an action item. I need a motion to approve from the committee.
Move to approve.
All right, have a motion Need a second?
Second.
And a second, all in favor, state aye. Aye. That's unanimous, and that goes to the consent agenda, Mr. Mayor. All right, next, we have the Streets and Transportation Report.
I've got it.
Okay.
I'm filling in on this one. Our LMIG project got underway, oddly enough, a little bit quicker than planned last Friday, and then has been subject to a delay due to COVID, which we're all sick of hearing. So East Washington has been milled. Bryant, Pinecrest will be milled sometime, hopefully next week, once crew is back on site. The current plan is for the county to pave the section of East Washington from Broad Street to South Madison tomorrow and Thursday. Today's Tuesday. And then hopefully get to the section that goes from South Madison to Felker early next week. So they'll get all of that back paved, then everything will resume next week. Crews have been patching, taking care of getting the easements figured out for the upcoming stormwater projects. Typical of the maintenance paving on Green, West Marable, Nowell Street behind the utility project water line that's being put in. And then they've been working on drainage projects, runway edges and everything at the airport. And then the rest of the numbers are in the report from Mr. Steele, who couldn't be here.
All right, any questions? Hearing none, that's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Chris, if you get a chance to talk to Jeremiah, Washington looks outstanding. That's a lot of excitement of actually doing things the right way instead of just throwing asphalt on it and watching our streets grow. Moving to utilities, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mayor. First item is the monthly electric and telecom report. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Our contract crew started on the Madison Avenue job, and about a week later, a hurricane hit the Gulf Coast. So both those crews are in the Gulf helping those people get their power back on. But that has also caused more material issues in the electric world. Transformers we're already strained at a timeline, and now it's even worse. They've got to, and of course, those materials need to go down there and get those people restored. Good thing is, Publix, Marshalls, and Ross are all powering off the transformer now. Five Below will be here shortly. These are all at the Pavilion project. And we only have 3 other transformers to install at that site, and they are here. So that's the good thing. And wire is pulled. We're waiting on a few more materials to get the front part where they're putting what they call the P buildings, and the P buildings are the restaurants out front. Get a few more pieces in here. I would hope they'd got here today. I don't think they made it. We should be able to get all that wrapped up by the end of next week and have that all wrapped up. We did get a full membership into the solar project. It actually was oversubscribed. I'm not exactly sure of our allocation. I will get that shortly after the next MEAG meeting, but it was great that it was subscribed to a level that the project can move forward. And we'll get a certain level of allocation from that. We are moving forward with putting conduit in the ground in a whole bunch of subdivisions. For our fiber project, we're getting fiber pulled in, but we're still having trouble getting electronics. We're still waiting on that. So that's moving forward. Stuff that we can get done is getting done. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Any questions?
So we're putting in the conduit, and we're already blowing the fiber. We're just waiting for the.
Electronics.
Thank you, Brian.
They're telling me mid to late November.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Middlebrooks, water, sewer, and gas report.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Just a couple of quick updates on some of our large projects. The Alcovey River Highway 138 sewer project, as expected, being 85% complete with the gravity line. So it's moving along very well, considering how much rock and water we ran into. The contractor showed up this past week at the sewer plant. It's getting started on the rehab of the plant there. Electricians doing away with some of the control work, moving some of it, and getting ready to tear the building down. So that's finally moving. And the 18-inch main from MAB back to the plant's been completed. It's pressure tested, and we'll be chlorinating it next week. We'll have it ready to go. And then the 24-inch raw water line and 20-inch finished water main project, that's with Wiedemann and Singleton. They've reached a 45% milestone. You'll see in the paper Sunday, the pre-qualification for the contractors. And if all goes as planned, we'll be bidding that out come December 2nd. So it's moving along rather quickly as well. If you've got any one more, the Loganville water line. It's, everything's completed except for the pressure sensors. That's what we're waiting on. We were told they'd be here in the next 2 days. So hopefully within the next week, we'll be ready to pump some water to Loganville.
You got any idea when they gonna start paving the roads over there on Nile?
I think, Chris,
Yeah, they were actually on Green Street today paving. So after they're through with Green, they'll get over to Nowell and over to West Marable.
any other questions?
Rodney? Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you.
The 2022 CDBG Grant Administration Services selections.
I've got that one.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to recuse myself.
Yes, sir. Noted.
Okay, so this is to request the approval. We had the bids for the selection of the grant administration services, and then it'll follow up the engineering services, which we do each time. And this one is a request that we approve Allen Smith Consulting to perform the 2022 CDBG grant administration services. And I think the actual project Rodney and I talked about, looking at the areas of Glen Iris, Stowers, and Bryant for sewer. For this project, I believe he said he had good documentation and whatnot for this one. I think that's going to be this particular project.
So you're asking us to approve Allen Smith Consulting?
Yes, sir.
Chairman, I move Allen Smith be granted that grant administration project.
Motion by Mr. Larry Bradley. Is there a second? I'll second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We recommend that to council. The 2022 CDBG Engineering Services select.
Yes, sir, and this will be the same thing. It's just that, it's the engineering services. We're requesting the approval of Carter Sloop, that were the recommendation by staff to do the engineering on this particular project.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Second by Mr. Todd Gregory. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Larry Bradley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We recommend that to full council.
Thank you.
That's all we got, Mayor.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Mr. Bradley, Public Safety.
Yeah, first item is the monthly fire report. Chief Dykes.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. If you'll see in front of you, you have our statistics from the month of July. We had 214 emergency incidents, with 5 of those being fires. And on the bright side with those fires, we had very little fire loss in terms of monetary loss. I believe it was confined to one appliance at approximately $450. You will see I've included a heat map again this month so we can continue to trend where our calls for service are being centralized and located. And again, the center of the city is pretty heavy, along with, in addition to the 138 Michael Etchison corridor, which is to be expected as that area receives so much traffic. We did give and receive aid roughly an equal number of times, which means that our aid agreement with the county works out very nicely, as they're coming into the city about as often as we're leaving the city. And lastly, I did add this month a comparison of the past 4 years of incident-type statistics, just so that you can see where we trend, and it appears that from the previous 3 years, the month of July was right on pace. Nothing really stood out of the ordinary. And on an operational level, we were able to have our aerial truck, our ladder truck, and all of our ground ladders tested, and our all of our pumps on our apparatus tested, which that ensures that everything works properly, and it's also required for ISO credit. So we've made all necessary repairs. That was completed last week of a few issues that were encountered on that. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Chief Dykes? Then we'll move to the fire department report. Chief Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. You have our numbers before you. You can see in comparison from 2020 to 2021, our calls for service is down by 212. Our court cases are up. Our Part A crimes are down compared to our last year at this time, and our arrests are up as well. Some major events we had in the month of July, we did have 2 shooting incidents, one on Perry Street, one in Monroe Estates. And I'm happy to say we made arrests in both of those incidents. In the last 30 days, our officers have taken 6 guns off the streets. And community event-wise, we did support the Ellen J. Harris Kids Foundation that you'd reached out to me about, Mayor. I remember back in July, and we were able to support them and providing supplies back to kids going back to school. And lastly, I just want to remind everybody, this past weekend was a very heartbreaking weekend for our department as once again we've lost another officer. Our evidence tech, Tracy Conroy, which was a 49-year-old female that served with the city here, did a phenomenal job for us. She had complications from COVID and was really hoping she was going to be able to pull through on this. But sadly to say, Sunday morning I received a call from her daughter stating that she lost her battle with that. So this week is going to be a week of preparing for the arrangements for that. And just keep her family in your prayers in the Monroe Police Department. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you should have any.
Thank you, Chief. Does anyone have any questions for Chief? I think I speak for all the council that we continue to pray for your entire department as well as Tracy's family.
Thank you.
We have one other item on the agenda, and Chief, if you could go on that one. It's about some out-of-state travel.
Well, what this is need the council's approval to move forward on the dollars being spent on the purchase of a 4th canine. This is a goal that I have had a vision to achieve for some time now, and what it was I want to be able to have 24/7 coverage for canine in the city. A few months back, we got the approval for the sale of the asset forfeiture of the vehicles that we had down at the city barn to go on govdeals.com. That sale went through a month ago, and so those funds are fixed to come available to the tune of about 40-something thousand, and that's what we're going to be pulling the funds from to purchase the canine with. So this is not any kind of expense to the taxpayers. This is actually asset forfeited funds from cases we've made here in the city, and just need the council's approval again for the purchase of the dog.
Just as clarification there, Chief, the actual cost of the dogs, this training and then et cetera, everything about it is $22,812. But because we have the asset forfeiture fund there to cover this cost, the cost out of the general fund or the taxpayers will be zero. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Any questions from anybody on this? Do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Dickinson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Ross Bradley. All in favor, say aye. Aye. That's approved. That'll be approved for next week's consent agenda, Mr. Mayor. That's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Before we move along, RV, if you would, just keep us in the loop on funeral arrangements.
Yes, sir, I sure will. I met with the daughters this morning for a couple hours, and she had very young daughters, 20 and I think like 24, 25. So you can imagine at that age trying to prepare your mother's funeral arrangements is pretty tough. But I did extend on behalf of the city that we would do anything and whatever they needed to help support them in that process.
Please, thank you. And also, Chief Dykes, just I want to commend you. Your reports are excellent, and I appreciate you being so thorough. We haven't had that before. And in testing the equipment, it's nice to know it's in working order. I know we've struggled in that area in the past too, so thank you for jumping on that. Moving to Ms. Malcolm at Planning and Code.
Yes.
I just have Brad Calendar sitting in today.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to really add for, Pat couldn't be here this evening, but he did want me to say that if any one of the council members had questions about the code report that's before you tonight, to just reach out and give him a call or send him an email. But just looking over the report, it seemed like it was fairly standard, straightforward month. That's all I have.
Okay. Are there any questions after review? Thank you.
I did want to briefly note that, like I said last month, we're going to ramp up ground covering enforcement throughout the city because of related stormwater issues. So the bulk of the report does demonstrate a lot of these items were addressed in July, but also into August as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malcolm. Thank you, Logan. Economic Development, Mr. Bradley, Mr. Ross Bradley.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Crosby, would you mind sharing that report with us, please, ma'am?
Yes, I'd be happy to, thank you. The images and the additional pages for the report are our annual work plan for the Downtown Development Authority. I put the highlights on the front, but then the details of what that board will try to achieve over the next 12 months is there for your review. And we do an all-day retreat in July, and this is the document that we submit to the state and then holds us accountable to try to achieve these goals. But back up to the points to make sure that you guys are aware of for this month. One is that Javion Oliver will be in town on the 18th, September 18th. We'll have a city parade at 10 a.m. downtown with public presentations to recognize her outstanding efforts in the Olympics. And so that'll be on the 18th. That's also Farmers Market, Pirate Day. There's a lot going on, but it should be a wonderful day downtown to celebrate her and her family. Also, we had 2 awards at the Georgia Downtown Conference this year. One was for John's Supermarket for Best Renovation, and for the Monroe Walton Center for the Arts for Outstanding Partner, Downtown Partner. So both of those winners will be here next week to have public recognition for those awards. And just wanted to, the city branding process is getting into the final stage, and so we'll have that to reveal to the community during our bicentennial week, and then we'll slowly be rolling that out for many, many months afterwards as we try to shift to the new brand for the city. And then the Blaine Station Master Plan, we have Lordak Sargent that's been working on that. That is going before Planning and Zoning this month. It'll be before you for review and approval next month, and we're really pleased with the pattern that they put together and the work that they've done. We hope that will be a big catalyst project for that side of town for future development. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Awesome. Are there any questions from Ms. Crosby? If not, that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ross. Ms. Crawford, Parks.
Thank you. Mr. Billy?
Thank you, ma'am. Couple of quick updates. Restroom for Pilot Park is ordered with CXT Buildings, the same thing that's at Matthew. And then we have a drainage improvement, a little small project that we've got to do some tweaks, add a drain on the lower section of Pilot Park. We were hoping we could do today, but the rain shower yesterday kind of pushed us back. Matthews Park, second phase is underway. The additional restroom is on order there, also from CXT. And then everything is ordered. Everything should pretty much start coming in within the next month or two as far as equipment, different things. The pavilion bids will be up next on the agenda. And once we get all that going, once we get the bathroom in, we get some additional stuff. We've got a company, I believe, out of South Georgia that's coming in to take a look at the lake, the pond, take a look at what's in it, do a full-fledged study. Met them at the GMA conference. We should hopefully be paving in the spring, I would think, based on how weather and the timing of that restroom, because I didn't want to put that kind of weight on new pavement. And we should be done with that second phase of Matthews. And then staff, myself, met with Keckenwood 2 weeks ago to take a look at the parks master plan that we had had designed somewhat in-house several, 3, 4 years ago, I believe it came before council and was approved. To take a look at what we've done already. They've also got to incorporate the River Park into that too, because that's a new one that's come into the city. And essentially revise that master plan, come back to council sometime probably next year, I would say, to be comfortable. To have that in front of council so we can take a look at where we go now with the parks. And get something in front of everybody and have council's input and whatnot. So I'll be glad to take any questions.
My only question is on the pavilion, Matthews Pavilion bids. It seems like such a wide gap between the highest and the lowest. Were those extremely, I'm assuming, very detailed?
Yes, 2 did math incorrectly.
I'm sorry?
2 did math incorrectly.
Oh.
But even when you recorrect their math, they were still high. So we left the bids as they submitted them.
Okay.
But yes, the low bid was extremely accurate.
You said most of the equipment should be in the next month, but that's not including the restrooms, correct?
Correct. The restroom was about a 4 to 5 month lead time, give or take, because they actually make it as you order it. Same thing with Pilot Park. The equipment that I'm talking about is going to be like your tables, your shade structures, your additional stuff to match everything that was in the first phase.
Okay, cool.
So it's just, it's sadly, it's like everything else. There's a lead time on everything. I mean, and it's being pushed out further and further. So, and then we're getting into the bad part of the year once everything comes in to where you destroy everything trying to install stuff.
All right, thanks.
Any more questions?
We will need.
Yeah, and then I'll jump to the next item for the pavilion approval. And this is, we still bid everything just because we had to, because it was over 100,000. And we were able to, I think the original quote we had that was unofficial when we discussed at the last little council kind of discussions we had was around 140 to 145,000. Seal bidding it, they actually came in at 117,800. So we saved quite a bit of money, which will help cover the expenses of the phase 2, which I was fully confident it would do. So asking for approval of that tonight to approve Great Southern Recreation to do the pavilion replacement and then to add the additional pavilion.
I'll make that motion, Ms. Crawford.
I'll second.
Oh, okay. Great.
Any objections? All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda for next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Public hearing, purchase and sale agreement for Liberty First Bank property at 830 Highway 138. Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. I can get into probably more details next week when we have the public hearing. I didn't have everything ready for the agenda in time to get it published. But essentially, we are looking at doing proactive right-of-way acquisition on a parcel owned by Liberty First Bank. So I'll give you the run-through of it. It's a $1.15 million purchase for the property, $230,000 down, 15-year owner finance, 4.25% simple interest. This was I think, a well-negotiated deal between both parties. And ultimately, this, we hope will create a long-term traffic alleviation along the Mayfield Drive corridor back to 138, create some interconnectivity, and this is just really just setting up all the blocks to be able to do this project later on. This will definitely benefit the state routes, so we're hoping that in due time we can go to the state, request some different off-systems money to construct this, but this is the starting block, like I said.
You said the rate's fixed?
It is a fixed rate, yes.
You good?
Any other questions?
Lee, thank you for coming. Did you want to say anything? Does anybody have any questions for Lee or Logan? Why can't we get it at 4.0, something like that?
Still negotiating?
Moving to the zoning ordinance code text amendment number 11. Brad, anything about that?
No, this is a pretty straightforward text amendment, adding 2 land uses to the industrial land use table, one for biodiesel fuel production, and I believe the other one was, I had a little slideshow for you there. We're adding two land uses, indoor food crop production and biodiesel fuel production. These will be uses by right in the M1 district. You can see these are simple insertions into the land use table itself inside our code. Pretty straightforward.
I'm just curious how this came about. How did we have to get some biodiesel production sorted out in the code?
Basically, this is our code. M1 is our most, this is our industrial zoning, and there's some economic development things in play for some users in the industrial park and other M1 industrial zone areas. So this is to make the code work for some users that are on board and coming soon.
For both, yes.
Okay. Moving preliminary plat review, 319 South Madison Avenue. Brad?
This is a pretty straightforward preliminary plat review. Believe the city council saw this in a conditional use permit some number of years ago. They're proposing 7 townhomes there between the blocks of Millage and South Madison Avenue. The plan's changed somewhat since the CUP, but it's improved and is compliant with our development regulations.
Are there any questions for Brad? Thank you, sir. Moving to the approval of the Chamber of Commerce contract. Terry? Miss Smiley and Miss Rowe are here tonight representing the chamber.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I wanted to take a little bit different approach and make sure I answered questions that came up last year when I wasn't here. So people often ask, what is a Chamber of Commerce? Okay, so that means something different in different communities. The answer is different for every business, it's different for every professional, it's different in different communities. To some, we're a resource for network and marketing. To some, we are the place where business and community come together. And to many, we are an advocate and voice for their business. We have many initiatives and programs to help our communities prosper, and we focus on helping our member businesses thrive. We bring together partnerships that bring value to our member businesses, and then they benefit from the connections that we provide for them to build relationships with like-minded businesses throughout Walton County. Local chambers matter in communities. We stay up to date on community and business issues, and we set an annual business plan to manage and influence those that we can. So what does the chamber specifically do to help the city of Monroe? We help the city of Monroe businesses thrive through social media workshops, keeping them up to date, all of 2020 on EIDL loans, PPP loans, hosting workshops virtually on both of these programs. We also administered the Facebook grant for small businesses last year and awarded 74 Walton County businesses with grants totaling $175,000. Many of our Monroe businesses cried when we delivered their checks to them because it meant that they got to pay their rent or their utility bill for yet another month and remain open. Even though this was not our money, okay, we were given the $175,000. We spent hours of staff time developing the application, hours delivering checks to people. To make sure that even our non-member businesses stayed open during COVID, we also began our hashtag Walton Strong Facebook page, which many businesses in Walton use to promote themselves on. We have managed the SPLOST campaign for the cities and the county for the past 20-plus years, and because we're a 501c6 organization, we can manage these campaigns for you all, yet we have to raise funds outside of our normal budget to do this so that we don't lose our nonprofit status. We know how important these dollars are for your infrastructure needs with the city. We also manage political candidate forums, which allow local voters to be knowledgeable about candidates running for election. And we do have some tentative dates that we're finalizing to also host those this year for all of our city elections. We produce a high-quality Walton County Community Magazine annually to market our wonderful county that we all call home. While we do contract with the company, they do sell ads. It does not cost us to produce the magazine. We spend hours of staff time on editorial and photo content to make sure that that publication is something that we all can be proud of. We also produce a Walton County map every 5 years. I'm still amazed that people come in and ask for a printed map because everybody uses GPS on their phone, but apparently not everybody, because we still have tons of requests for printed maps. These are all great tools for new businesses and new residences, and also give businesses an opportunity to market their businesses in both publications. How many members do we currently have? We have 664 members. 277 of those are in the 30655 zip code. Obviously, all of those are not in the city limits of Monroe, but our software doesn't separate out what's in the city of Monroe versus what's in a zip code. Our members pay annual membership fees, $100 for elected officials that are members, $200 for nonprofit members, and business members pay a range of $360 to $3,000, depending on the benefits that they want for their membership. Our total membership income budgeted for 2021 is $198,000, and we have already met that budget. This makes up 50% of our total budget for the year, which is just under $400,000. Other than our membership income, our other sources of income are our special signature events. These funds raise money for our budget and also give our members, member businesses marketing opportunities. Our total budget net income for 2021 for these events is $20,000 with an additional $65,000 committed in sponsor and event package dollars, which was purchased by our members. So that's about 22% of our budget. And our government contracts, which is what I'm here for tonight, we have contracts with the City of Loganville, Monroe, Social Circle, and Walton County Board of Commissioners. That total amount is $37,000, which is 9.2% of our budget. And Monroe's portion of $5,774 is 1.4% of our total budget. Any additional income comes from other programming or our annual magazine, which is the remaining 15 to 16%. Likewise, our expenses. We have run several programs that don't fund themselves. Youth Leadership Walton, Buy Local campaign, our Walton Proud initiative, Women in Business, Business Council workshops, Reality Check education program we do with 8th graders, our annual Star Banquet, our membership meetings and events, including our upcoming Member Appreciation Luncheon on September 21st, marketing and communications, from our software to our database that we have all the members on, to our website, print, online, video ads that we run to market the chamber, all cost money. Our new campaign that we're launching this month is the Walton Chamber Relationships That Last a Lifetime. Other expenses are general and administrative, staff salaries, payroll taxes, retirement benefits, monthly and annual accounting fees, office expenses including a lease purchase payment, utilities, phone, janitorial, upkeep and maintenance, supplies and postage, website, database, annual fees, dues to various state and national organizations, registration fees for conferences, to receive annual training to be sure we're staying relevant in today's world for our community and our local businesses, as well as lots of insurance. One thing we don't have is health insurance. I think I need to talk to Les and get him to come talk to my board after hearing y'all's great health insurance benefits and health plan. We do have directors and officers liability insurance, building content insurance, workers' compensation, general liability, event liability insurances. While as pointed out at last year's meeting, I wasn't able to attend. We did not have a purchase payment or a lease purchase payment before last November. That amount is $1,400 a month. We did not have that at our old building. However, we did still have all of the other expenses that I've mentioned, and we did pay half of the building expenses to keep the doors open: utilities, janitorial, maintenance, and telephone. We split that with the Development Authority. We have 3 full-time employees. We have a student intern from time to time when we can find one that wants to work. I have had the fortunate opportunity of working for the Chamber for over 26 years. Feeling like you make a difference in your local community and helping businesses is truly a passion for me. Like I said earlier, the Chamber fills a unique role in a community, and here in Walton County, a few more programs I'll go a little bit more detail with: Leadership Walton program, Class members do pay to participate in that program. However, a lot of time is spent, mainly by me, to administer that program. We manage a youth leadership program for high school juniors and seniors. They pay $50 one time to participate. That does not even cover their opening retreat. We are responsible for raising the rest of those funds to make sure that that program happens, and the Leadership Walton Alumni Association also helps us with that. We continue to promote Walton Proud locally and regionally. While that is a partnership with our local schools, the Chamber also puts money into the marketing pot for this initiative. We manage a Buy Local campaign, which encourages and educates the public on the importance of shopping local for gas, groceries, gifts, and dining. Of course, this helps our local small businesses, but it also helps all of you in making sure that your sales tax dollars come in for the projects that you want to do. Finally, as new residents and new businesses visit, many times our chamber is the first impression for them. It is important that we maintain a professional, welcoming office and staff for our community. Tonight, we are here asking for your continued support of our regular contract for the 2021-22 budget year, and that total is $5,744.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Terry. Any questions?
Covered it all.
Lee is a past president, right? Right, Chairman? Sorry, you're the president, he's the chairman. Did you have anything that you want to add? Thank you, Lee. Carrie, thank you for being here, too. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, move that to next week. Moving to the appointment of the Housing Authority. Mr. Stacy Favors' term will expire on October 6th, 2021. He has confirmed that he'd like to be reappointed for another 5-year term expiring October 6th, 2026. That's the kind of thing we will slam dunk next week as well. Moving to the professional service selection for Monroe Historic Survey update, Sadie?
Yes, we issued an RFP, and those are still coming in. The Historic Preservation Commission's doing a special called meeting this week to review those, and they will present their recommended firm from their perspective who can conduct this first phase of our historic survey update. At this point, this is a requirement by DCA for us to maintain our certified local government status, and our historic survey is by far outdated because it was last done in the 80s. So now, if any structure is older than 1982, it's surveyed as historic. Just hard to hear if you were born before that. So we have a big task ahead of us. It's going to be a multi-year project, and this will be the first phase of updating our historic survey, which will guide HBC in their role of historic preservation.
Sadie, if it's built before 1982, it can be considered historic. Do you have to accept that, or?
No, that's a great question. So this survey doesn't determine what gets protected or in a district. It's just a survey of the resource, basically describing it, that you have in the database. That's what's required. So it doesn't necessarily change our historic districts. That would be recommendations that would come later. This is just the initial survey to kind of know what we have.
Thank you. Any questions for Sadie? Hearing none, we'll move to the first reading of the zoning ordinance code text amendment number 11. That will be read next week. Next, we'll move to the adoption of the Walton County Hazard Mitigation Plan Update 2020 through 2025. Chief Dykes?
Yes, thank you. FEMA requires that every city and county have a disaster plan, a mitigation plan in place. And this plan that you have in your agenda packet is the plan that Walton County worked on in late 2019. Every city in the county and the county has to approve this plan because it is a countywide plan, and it did have representation from all of those different agencies in its formulation. In fact, if you look through the 300-page document, you'll see multiple department heads and representatives from our city in there. Ultimately, what this means is that by signing this, we're supporting the plan that the county has put in place, and that also allows the county to apply for reimbursement through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program should there be any type of major disaster and so forth. So the resolution that we have here is a formality that every municipality has to approve.
Is this new? Or we?
It's done every 5 years, but I would say that since the county hired Carl Morrow as the EMA director, they have been much more engaged in terms of involving folks. The plan's always been there, but I've never remembered a time that we were actually asked input, whereas this time it was a several-month process, meeting at the county government building and going through different areas during the formulation of it.
Okay. Are there any questions for Andrew? Hearing none, we'll move to the American Rescue Plan Act funding. Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, sir. This is a required resolution from the FAA and DOT for the airport's version of the ARPA funding that's been pushed down. It's a ratio basis to each individual airport, very similar to the COVID relief funds that we've received 2 of already to help cover expenses. This will be along that same dynamic and the same thing that we're receiving for utilities, general fund, and whatnot.
So have they determined how we can use these funds?
It's to just cover expenses, anything that's reimbursable as far as operating project expenses and such. It's set up the same as the COVID relief funds that we were given.
Gotcha, thank you. Are there any questions for Chris? Moving back to Sadie with Georgia Cities Week.
This is a resolution we do every year in partnership with the Georgia Municipal Association, and they create a theme, and we typically do social media posts and have some coloring sheets and some activities for kids, along with the general plan city activities that we have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Sadie? Moving to the local government lighting project agreement, Mr. Probst.
Trying to get through all the hazard mitigation program here. Yeah, kind of a ways to go. This is the lighting project agreement. We do these on all of our federal transportation projects for streetscaping. So this is Transportation's alternative project, which will be running down North Broad here, running back down East Highland, then down North Lumpkin. So we are essentially responsible for the lighting and maintenance of those lights that are installed, but funded by the federal government. That's the gist.
Any questions?
And the placement of those lights is out of our hand, correct?
Yeah, so we have to go by the federal guideline photometrics, which you see up on the North Broad LCI project. That'll continue down this section of North Broad through the middle of town here.
Ooh, it will be bright.
It will be bright.
But at least you'll see the lights through the trees now.
Yes. We will, of course, ask for a few amendments where we can, especially in the highly residential areas. But other than that, I mean, we may get a waiver for a couple here or there. Other than that, it'll probably match what you see on the north end.
Are there any more questions? Moving to the GFA Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund loan application. Beth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a resolution in order for us to engage in an application with GFA, which is the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. This is for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund loan application. It would be in the amount of $2,934,798. This would be for construction of the new elevated water storage tank, along with approximately 5,500 feet of water main to serve citizens along the northeast side of Monroe at the industrial park. I know you may be asking why would we engage in a loan from GFA when we just got bond funds, but The thought process behind this is that JIFA is offering a $1.1 million loan forgiveness, and the remainder of the loan would be paid by the utility bonds. Actually, our legal counsel has looked into this to make sure that, and they're assuming that this is approved and assuming that we can pay it back with bond funds. Also, the remainder of it would be at a 1.13% at 20-year payback, but with not a penalty for early payback if we wanted to pay it back with the utility bonds.
So is that basically $1 million savings or $1.1 million savings because it's forgiven?
Yes.
Rather than we did the whole project through? Okay.
Right.
And the balance of 1.8 million is at 1.1% instead of 2.
Right.
Solid.
Yeah, good deal. Are there any questions for Beth?
There we go. Just, if this gets approved, we'll get, I've already talked to bond counsel, and they think it'll be fine, but we'll get bond counsel to give us an opinion letter that this doesn't create any problems for our bonds, which we don't think it will, given the metrics of saving $1 million.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions for Mr. Rosenthal? Hearing none, let's move forward to my letter of acknowledgement regarding Morris Ford. There are two parts to this. First, you all know that the Morris Ford lynchings happened 75 years ago last month, or 75 years ago in July. As I came on board as mayor, things were rocking along, and the George Floyd incident happened, which obviously was terrible, and we had folks who were out front picketing and having gatherings. And you know, we have done extremely well with our town, with our growth, with our downtown shops and businesses. But to have people gather en masse to protest, something just didn't sit right with me. And I contacted a few folks and asked them to be on a diversity advisory board. At the time, I called it Minority Affairs Council, which they changed the name as they were officially formed. One of the items that obviously comes up is the history of a population of our community that is not felt included. And after going around for several months, having this discussion with each of them, privately and publicly, we formed formed an actual organization that's kind of the accepted voice of a population historically disenfranchised. At that same time, or just before that, Young Game Changers had announced that, you know, we have not accepted each other racially with our gifts and our differences. And that the black population of Monroe has just not felt trusted or not been trusted by the white population. And after talking with Young Game Changers, talking with Diversity Advisory, I wrote a letter several months ago, sent it out to a few folks, got some comments about whether or not they thought it should have come from Monroe, should it be signed by all council, should it be signed by Diversity Affairs, and frankly, I didn't care. I was ready to sign it and send it with my name, and that was that. Then we have an historical marker that is a temporary marker that we're going to place out by the flagpole. And the Museum of Civil Rights will be donating an actual marker when they open back up from COVID. So in the meantime, we don't know where that's going to go. What we talk about tonight will have nothing to do with that. That's something that I prefer the county take their part. And one of the issues that I think you'll all see work out tonight is a lot of this is semantics, because what happened with those 4 people who were lynched, they were taken out of a county jail, although it was downtown in the city of Monroe. They were taken into the county. They were then murdered in the county. However, my concern and the reason that I chose to wrote this with their assistance was that people from Monroe are hurting. And I think it's best that we acknowledge their pain, not anyone's role in it, but we acknowledge their pain and why it was caused and why it was basically swept under the rug for decades. I did have one amendment to this. It was written this morning. The final draft will be to you for next week's meeting. But I do want to go ahead and read the updated version. There's been renewed interest in the lynching at Morris Ford, which took place 75 years ago near the Walton and Oconee County line. Each year, there are marches and reenactments portraying the route taken by the victims from downtown Monroe to the scene of the murders of George and May Murray Dorsey and Roger and Dorothy Malcolm. In the months and years that followed the lynching, the Federal Bureau of Investigation spent months in and around Monroe, Georgia, trying to investigate the murders. Out of fear and mistrust, they received no cooperation from the people of Monroe or Walton County. Many years later, the case was reopened. More investigations and questioning by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation led to no resolution. To date, there's been no justice for these wrongdoings. We cannot fathom the level of hate that would have driven men to murder fellow human beings so violently. At the same time, we cannot begin to comprehend the fear that was within the minds of those who were killed by the mob. We can attest to the painful impact on our community that we see today from these past transgressions. An idea created by Young Game Changers, the Monroe Diversity Advisory Board acts as a liaison between the mayoral office and the City of Monroe City Council on issues related to diversity and inclusion. In November 2020, the Monroe Diversity Advisory Board made a request for a public apology regarding the actions associated with this horrific event. As noted by the Young Game Changers, the voices of minorities are often simply not as amplified as others due to a variety of challenges and traditions. It is vital to a community's growth and vitality to have all parties working together to find common ground for conversation and to set common priorities for policies, programs, and growth. Lynching reflects a horrific racial violence that regretfully affected much of our nation. We oppose these past injustices and express sympathy to the victims' families and their descendants. As Gloria Steinem said, it takes 4 generations to heal an act of violence. There's still much healing needed, and our hope is that this public statement, along with our continued work to bring all of Monroe together, will have a positive impact on our future. As Monroe and Walton County have become thriving examples of progress, it is of utmost importance that we continue to improve, striving to make this world a better place. By acknowledging the past, we gain the insight of others. Our future success depends on all of us, all races, all people working together. We pray that God bless and unite our community with His grace. You may choose to sign as a council. I may choose to sign it by myself, but this is getting signed.
Mr. Mayor, may I be heard?
Yes, sir, please.
I want to start, I'm going to preach to you a little bit. The book of Amos, the 5th chapter, I think it's about the 24th verse, is one of Dr. King's favorite quotes, and it's, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. If you go look at various translations of that, one of the ones you'll find is that basically the meaning of that verse is do what's right in your interactions with other people. I've been in this community for 40 years. I did not even know Morris Ford had happened until I'd been here several years and was in law school over at the University of Georgia. It's been a stain upon this community for 75 years. And in 75 years, nobody has ever stood up and said to families of the victims and to the black folks that live in this city and in this county, we're sorry. I've said for a long time that there will never really be complete healing in this community until we collectively do that. I didn't grow up here. I don't have any ancestors that were involved in it. But issuing an apology, issuing this letter, accepting that marker as a community, I believe is absolutely essential to our well-being as a city and as a county. And, you know, it's just do the right thing. And I have said to the Diversity Board that I certainly will sponsor the motion. I will individually sign the letter with the mayor. We just need to say, we are sorry. We wish this had never happened. We can't ever undo that horrible event, but we can collectively as a people say it was awful and we're sorry. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
I got a few questions about it. Just the timing just seemed kind of odd to me. You saying they asked in 2020, November 2020. And here we are in September 2021. What was the holdup?
Trying to get the formulation of it. And I will tell you this, Mr. Garrett, and I think you know this. I worked with the Morris Ford Committee a quarter of a century ago, trying to bring reconciliation on this issue. And I have not departed from the positions I took 25 years ago anytime since. It is long overdue, and we just need to do it. And it just took some time to get to this point.
Have any of y'all actually went out there to the reenactment or actually participated in anything that they do with Moore Ford?
I do not participate in the reenactment, and if you go back and look at the history, there was a division between the Morris Ford Committee and Gabio, which is the sponsor of the reenactment. My very good friend, Rich Rusk, who's no longer with us on this earth, we were two of the people who disagreed with Senator Brooks about doing the reenactment. So, no, I don't participate in the reenactment. Have I participated in events at the bridge? Yes. I was mayor.
So,
But not the reenactment.
the timing just kind of questioned. It kind of gave me pause to just think that all of a sudden now we want to apologize. And the truth be told, ain't nobody in here on this board had nothing to do with the Moore Ford lynching.
True.
Now, there's some people in here that might know more about the Moore Ford lynching than they're actually saying, though. We ain't gonna know that because he just want to read the paper. And I don't think, in my opinion, if you not went out there and actually see what actually they saying, what is true or false, we really don't know. But to just all of a sudden come in here and tell a council member that we just gonna read this with no real regard to the people that participated or actually know anything about the Moore Ford just seemed a little fishy to me. Do we have anybody actually in here that represent the diversity board in this meeting tonight?
I don't see.
So clearly they don't think it was worth even reading by the representation that you don't actually have nobody here that's supposed to be on the board. That's kind of interesting to me also.
Well, I don't see it that way, Mr. Garrett.
I think this is I don't want to call it a political stunt, but that's what it actually is.
Well, you're wrong.
We do
we
not
met,
see.
Norman.
You talk, now you let me talk.
Well,
You
you
did talk,
just
you let me
just
talk.
asked a question. I can answer a
I
question
didn't ask
for
you
you.
no question. I said, I made a
You
statement.
said you think it's fishy, and I'm telling you why the board chose to do it this time. They wanted to do it in
You chose to
conjunction
do
with
it.
the
The board didn't chose to do
75th
nothing. That's what you
Diversity
chose.
Advisory Board.
You don't have
We
a
wanted
single
it-
person here from that board,
I can't be
not
here for
one.
them. I saw the letters from them today.
And from talking to them, they feel like what you saying and what you're doing is political
I'm
theater.
talking to them. You talked to all of them?
I didn't have to talk to all of them. I talked to enough of them though.
You talked to
And
members of the
I'm
Diversity
telling you
Advisory
exactly what they wanted me to say. This just political theater, looking to get something, and I guess your upcoming election.
You can, you can ask them next week when they're here on the night that we actually approve this, Mr. Garrett. You feel free, you can call them all if you like, right this second. It doesn't bother me. They wanted it in conjunction with the 75th anniversary, but they could not agree on the wording. This is wording that came from them.
We'll see about that.
I'm sure we will see about that.
'Cause it's just ironic that,
Do you not want to do the right thing?
what's the right thing? The right thing
The right
is tell
thing
who
is-
actually killed them people.
The right thing is
That's the right
actually,
thing to do. Tell
Norman,
who actually involved. Appeasing
nobody
people for a
nobody
laugh.
knows that, as far as I know, who did. If you know them, point them out. But I think we do deserve to acknowledge the fact that it happened, because so far, nobody's ever acknowledged it. As a matter of fact, people don't want to acknowledge it now because they say, well, that was in the county. Well, you know, it was in the county. I can tell you right now, it was in the county. It was out of county jail. But it was actually people in Monroe right now that are still hurting from it.
We probably need to be apologizing to the people that hurting from it.
Who
Because I
are
don't
on
see
the
nobody
Diversity
taking no
Advisory
real
Board.
in this, other than you just want to read a letter or write a letter, whatever you done done.
You want
From my
to
understanding, the
talk to
letter
each
was
of them?
supposed to be last month, read last month.
It was, but they didn't agree on the wording. I'm not the one who just said it's going to be worded just like this. You know, the last amendment I got was this morning. That's why your letter looks a little bit different than the one that came across. Is the acknowledgement the same? Absolutely. Is the purpose for it right? Absolutely it is. If you don't think the purpose is right, Norman, I think you're going to have some major issues down the road. We
Well,
need
I
to
always have
acknowledge
a
the
major
injustice.
You think reading a letter is justice?
I
Writing a
said
letter
we
is justice?
acknowledge the injustice. There's a difference between saying it's justice or it's injustice. We're acknowledging that it happened. It's an intellect thing. Some folks are going to understand that we're acknowledging it happened. I'm also in here, it does not say, I'm sorry that anybody did this, because you know what? We're all sorry that it happened, but I can't apologize for something that other people did. I would like to hear some comments from council, whether you think it's a good idea or not. If you don't, fine, Dave and I'll sign it and put it in the paper or wherever it needs to go, but Diversity Advisory Board is the ones who wrote the letter. If you think they disagree with it, you probably need to come to one of their meetings and talk to them.
I have been talking to them.
Did you go to any of their meetings and say it publicly? Probably not, because I haven't seen you at one. I haven't been to all of them either
We
because it's a
realized
private.
when you
it's a
read
private
it in the
board.
group, it's a lot of words been changed from what you actually wrote.
I didn't write it. Again, it was sent this morning from the Diversity Advisory Board, Elizabeth Jones, who was unable to be here tonight. Did you want me to put words
So
in her
you
mouth?
think me, you want me to think this the only one that been wrote? What we reading here tonight?
There have been 3 of them that were written. The first one was my attempt. I sent it to them. They added, they changed. They added, they changed. But it's not up to me. That's why we have a separate board. Because I said when I started it, I see the world through the lens of a 50-year-old, 51-year-old white man. I can't see for all of us. I'm sorry you don't agree with the timing. They wanted it on the 75th anniversary, which would have been July. That didn't happen. But it wasn't because I said no. It was because the board couldn't work out the wording. And I'm sorry you think it's fishy, but you're wrong.
I beg to differ.
Wrong is wrong, right, right. You would be wrong, if all you want. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I do want to hear also the discussion on the marker. The reason the attempt was initially made to just put the marker out there was because it's temporary, similar to the lowering of a flag is temporary. That's up to, of course, the president, the governor, but when it's local, it's up to the mayor. It was not any ill intent, it was just something that was going to be done and had been requested. So we had some in Sadie's budget for, I don't know what budget it is, Sadie, downtown development, economic development. And then it was brought up, well, this wasn't approved. Well, since it was temporary, I didn't think it needed to be approved. And I did say executive privilege, Larry, and apologize for that quick snip of a reply, but that's really similar to a flag. So does anybody have any issues with this?
I do have a question on that. Do we as a city have any policy on monuments placed on city property?
I don't think we have anything specifically in our code of ordinances.
I look at the issues that are facing monuments on governmental property throughout the country today and the controversies that continue to come. So my suggestion is that we should not place monuments on city property unless we have a policy that spells out what those monuments, should be for. I look specifically at things that have happened with citizens or events in the city of Monroe over history, and there are multiple tragic events that have occurred that affect the people of Monroe. I look at law enforcement, for example. People have been killed in the line of duty. Sheriff Sarles was sheriff of Walton County, but he was a Monroe resident who was killed as he went on a call for the sheriff's department, and was shot down with a shotgun. I look at Michael Etchison, who was an employee of the city of Monroe that was killed on duty. That type of thing was tragic. I look at other racial or civil rights issues that have occurred. I look at, the gentleman who was at Texas, citizen of Monroe, that was out there, that his black gentleman, his unit was accused of a crime that he said did not occur. He came back to Monroe. The President of the United States disbanded their unit and discharged them without honor for no reason, unduly. When he came back to Monroe and the people from Washington came to interview him about this, the citizens of Monroe, the leaders of Monroe, came together, black and white, and argued his case. And argued the case that this was racial injustice, and they won that case. This is Mr. Buddy Conyers. He later became a business owner in Monroe. His wife was probably the most well-known caterer in Monroe. She had her own business. These are things that people had severe injustices done that are residents of Monroe. And I'm not even talking about your letter or anything, just talking about whether a monument needs to be. I think it needs to be a policy. And I would think that policy needs to be that we only do monuments and memorials for people that are either residents of Monroe or events that happened in Monroe. I don't think this one fits that case. And I understand what you say about the person who was taken out of jail in Monroe, but he wasn't taken out of jail by a mob. He was released from jail and in Monroe. This is not a mob taking him out of jail in Monroe and taking him to be lynched. It has nothing to do with that. I don't think it's a Monroe issue. Let me rephrase it. I don't want to put it that way. I don't think that it justifies a monument on City of Monroe property for any event that did not occur in Monroe or affect a citizen of Monroe. That's my thing. So I would be opposed to the monument for that reason. I don't want it to be construed as I'm opposed to racial harmony.
Oh, no.
I have worked my entire adult life actively for racial harmony, whether it was back in the 1970s, through youth sports with the Boys Club in Athens and other things like that, whether it was in work where I'm in biggest part of my healthcare financial management work was in organizations where I had majority minority groups of people that I work with. And, you know, and I've always looked at these people properly, and I don't want to do that here tonight. I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying about the monument. I don't think the monument, this monument belongs in the city of Monroe property for the reasons I just said earlier, and I would be opposed to that.
Thank you, Larry. Lee?
Well, I too feel strongly about the fact that it doesn't belong on city property. I too I've taught probably more minority children in my teaching, 25 years of teaching, than I did other races. And those children will tell you that I love them through and through. And I love them to this day. And this has nothing to do with anything but the right place for it to go. And I just feel that it is something that we should honor. If we're going to do this, the ordinance should revolve around those people in the city that have been, you know, through a terrible situation. And this is just, I just don't think it's the place.
I understand. I believe the advisory board was going to meet with the county as well, so preferably that's something that if this board decides they don't want to move forward with a monument, maybe they will. That would actually be a preference, but we got to start somewhere. Ms. Crawford?
Caught you off guard. Me too.
You want me to come back to you? Okay, Boss?
I don't know how to comment on this, and I don't know if a government capacity is the time that I would want to speak to it. Monument itself, I think, is a great acknowledgement. But I don't know what can be done from inside of these chambers. Ordinances, rules, and all this stuff, they're gonna make anything from the past right. You know, we heal relationships over bread, at the dinner table, out in the community. And that's something I'm committed to. It's something my church is committed to. It's something that a lot of people in this town are committed to. And so I have no issue with that marker serving in a spot that's a placeholder for what we can hope is a healed relationship between different pockets of the community as well as individuals. So I have no objection to the marker or the letter. I think it's all great, but at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything that happened in the past. It's not going to change anything that happens today or tomorrow. I mean, that's, you know, that's something that each individual has to they have to make that commitment themselves. And, you know, I think it's all great, but, you know, that's not going to heal it.
I agree. It's like you got to start somewhere. Nathan?
Well, there's no doubt that it was truly a tragedy that occurred, and it's even worse that it's never been said. But in fact, it wasn't on, I don't think it belongs on city property. It's not, even though it may, there are some ties to the city of Monroe. It was not the city that initiated anything to take those people out of the jail, or there were not any representatives of the city that I know of involved. I just don't think it involved the city of Monroe. That was my thing.
Tyler?
My first council meeting actually was where we saw the diversity board first represented and here. And I was sitting next to David, and I've said to David on multiple occasions, knowing his past, his history, working with the Morris Ford Group and as the mayor of Monroe, that he had long desired to see that change happen in Monroe. And I was kind of awestruck because, first off, anytime you're working with people, you know how long it takes for things to change, and you know how hard it is to change hearts and minds and for people to forgive. And like Councilman Bradley said, to come together, to have a meal, and to build relationship back again when such a terrible thing's been done. And so to be able to sit next to him 25 years after what he wanted to see happen finally happened, and for somebody to be able to come, a strong young man be able to come forward and say, hey, look, we know this happened, and we want to acknowledge it and see what's going on and how we can change our community for the better. And that was an awesome thing to see, that someone who had worked 25 years for that to happen finally saw the needle move just a little bit. And so I think that as we acknowledge what's happened and the brokenness that's here, I think that there's a mixture of what we're all kind of talking about that needs to take place. I'd like to work with the Diversity Council more and hear more what they have to say and see what we can, what we can kind of work out together. I'd like to work with the county more to see what we can work out together, because this is obviously an issue that's much larger than any one of us or any one resolution that we can pass or whatever else. And the truth is again, like Mr. Bradley said, this is a daily choice that we have to make, that we go out into our communities, that we make friends, that we learn to love one another, that we work together on these issues. You can't fix these things by just passing a resolution or by changing some little thing that doesn't actually cause interaction between people. And so I think these are all great things, and I will gladly be a part of acknowledging them and apologizing for them. And, unfortunately, I'm not from here, and therefore, like David, it's a little different for me. And I know that it's different for people who lived here and for who have had this be a part of their everyday lives and that kind of deal. It's much more sensitive, and so I don't want to be insensitive to that for anybody on any case. But at the same time, we absolutely must move forward, and we absolutely must bring unity to Monroe. We have to acknowledge the pain and the hurt that people have and deal with that in the best way that we can. And so I want to see things change, and I want to see Monroe united. And that does take each and every one of us reaching out to our friends and neighbors and bridging that gap.
Thank you, Tyler. I'm going to come back to my issue. Are you ready?
I mean, to a lot of y'all, to me, these people were my family. A lot of y'all probably don't understand. This isn't just about some reading or some marker. These were actually family members, so it hit different for me than it do for the rest of y'all. I don't know what the motives are. I don't really care what the motives are. Just imagine if it was your family.
Mr. Dickinson and Mr. Garrett want to add anything else?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Norman?
Nope.
All right. Here's what I'm proposing for next week, and we will have, that board will be represented next week. They try to stay away from a work session, I suppose. I'm going to recommend the letter. We'll reread and have any discussion that you so desire. And if you would like to sign as a council, you could make that motion. And in vote, you will sign as a council, each of you will sign, and if you vote against it, none of you will sign. I'm signing it. It will come from me, it will not come from the city. If that's the route that you would like to take. I know these people, they're my friends, and that's what they want. I will not move forward with the approval of that monument until we come up with something that's acceptable as monuments on public property. Maybe we can work out something for next month. Or the month after, or the month after that, but no, we'll work on it. I do know if this were to be ordered today, it's probably not in our hands for 3, 4, 5 months. So we do have a little bit of time for that. So we'll revisit that again, let's just say soon, and Logan and Paul and I will get together on some wording for that. Moving to the mayoral update, couple of things. You notice we did some zoning text amendments tonight. We, on the Development Authority side at Piedmont Industrial Park, should have up to 3 announcements by the end of the year. I was kind of hoping one of them we could have tonight, but that's going to be coming along very, very quickly. That's going to add some good jobs and good financial resources to the city. And then we'll have one that's could be coming at Stanton Springs as well, which is Shane Short and the Development Authority put in a lot of work on that. Finally, Boys and Girls Club, Duck Derby. Katie Downey is the nice blonde lady behind Julie Sams, the nice redheaded lady. Was in the river on Saturday of last week. The Alcovy River, we dropped in 3,500 ducks to raise money for the Boys and Girls Club. Stephanie was videoing and taking pictures. I don't know the amount raised, do you, Katie? But running at about $100 per 5 ducks, up to about $35,000 would have been raised. So that was exciting for the boys and girls of Monroe and Walton County. That is all I have. It doesn't look like we have a need for executive session tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Ross Bradley,
Second.
second by Ms. Malcolm. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you.